Science, 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 science.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the 6th episode of A Moment of Science with Mr. Solis. Today's guest, once again, is Mr. Quintero from down the hall. And now we have an 8th grade math teacher, Miss Zoll. Miss Zoll, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Annie Zoll. I'm the 8th grade math teacher, or not the 8th grade math teacher, only in my mind. But I also teach algebra this past year anyways. And I'm also the math department chair at our school.
I always pronounce your name wrong, even though you've corrected me like all the time. So it's Miss Zoll.
I don't know. It just sounds prettier, but I answered it.
What kind of name is that?
That's German. From the Bavarian region. It means customs. I always like to joke in, especially high school, my friends make fun of me because I would brag about how when you got off the airplane in Germany, you'd see Zoll for customs.
Oh,
yeah,
that's funny.
And then when I went to Germany, I saw it. So I was like, that's right.
You know, your name is probably one of the few names that I could remember when I first started working at Kingsborough, because I'm horrible with names. Like it took me. Do you remember Miss Baez? Or who was our vice principal?
Academic dean, right?
Yeah. I called her Miss Tristan for like 2 years, and she was always getting mad at me. I could never remember like anybody's name. And
well, you know what's funny about that? It's actually Baeza.
Yeah, that's what it's Baeza, right? Yeah.
It's called it Baez.
I got her Baez for a long time. Yeah, like if you have a unique name, then I'll remember you. If you don't, then like that's the way I am with my students. If their name is something like David, I'm like, I'm never gonna remember your name. I have to either like talk to them by their last name. For some reason I remember last names, or I have to just make up like a nickname. So most of my students have nicknames.
Don't you have a unique in 6th grade?
I did once, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm horrible with names. I can remember faces, but like there was even like this past year with my basketball players where I didn't even know the names. They're like, Coach, you've been coaching me for 4 weeks. How do you not know who I am? And I'm like, you're a stringy hair guy. Let's go.
I don't know. I've known you for a few years, and we would mention, whatever teacher, and you'd be like,
right.
Who? I'm like, oh my God, he like works across the hall from you.
Well, we had that faculty meeting like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and it was on the Tau View, and I started looking through. I'm like, who are some of these people? I didn't even know some of the people we had on campus. But I guess they're just like helpers or something. I don't know. There's still a bunch of people I don't know.
Edward, they're all teachers.
Were they? Okay. Yeah.
That's why you give kids. That's why you always give them nicknames. Like,
yeah.
It's all about knucklehead because it's easier when you just.
And then the kids will be like, they'll come in around like September, October for open house, and they'll be like, "Sir, my mom's gonna meet you," and then she'll be like, "Hi, do you know my son or daughter?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know who any of you people are." I fake it really well. I'm like, "Oh yeah, can you remind me again? What period do I have you?" And I'm like, I have no idea who any of you people are.
And where do you sit?
Yeah. Or the first thing they do is they come in and they're like, "Hey, tell me about my student," and I'm like, "You first."
I don't like the meet the teacher night in September. It's like, I don't know. You tell me about your kid. What should I expect?
My first year was really difficult because I didn't know, like, they just threw me in there and said, "Hey, like, we're having open house." And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about. And I think I like talked to them way too much. And the parents were like, okay, yeah, I think parents just want to know like what do they have to do, or how do they get a good grade or whatever. And I was just like, here's a science book and here's page 15. And they're like, I don't care about any of this. So how long have you been teaching now?
It's funny that you asked that. I was calculating it yesterday. This next year, I'll be completing my 8th year this year, 7th year at KMS.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quintero, how long have you been teaching for?
Next year, this year is my 18th year. So next year will be my 19th year. And they're all at KMS. So that was, I haven't been anywhere else. Matter of fact, Miss Tovar is the second principal I ever worked under.
Oh, wow.
Because Mr. Hall, remember, he was principal. That's unheard of, I think, for a principal to the tenure that long. When I was doing my master's degree, and everyone at the school would tell me, yeah, I've worked under 7 principals, 8 principals. Like, ask Mr. Larios how many principals they worked under before Mr. Hall, and I'm like, what? And then I was like, okay, I've only had 1 principal. Before it's over, I was like, I've only worked under 1 principal, and they're like, dude, they've had so many changes. So it was unusual, and I think that's why a lot of people were like set in their ways, because you didn't have a lot of change all the time with new principals coming in. But yeah, 19 years, man, it's a long time.
And I'm barely going to be getting done with my 6th year. So I was at Hack first. That was an interesting experience.
What'd you do there?
Yeah.
I was a teacher assistant. So like at Hack, they're not allowed to like go anywhere by themselves, or like even during passing periods. My job was to like follow them around, and yeah.
So that first year, your kids were like, "Why are you following me to the restroom?"
Yeah.
And like, I'm not being creepy, I swear.
That's what you were doing. That's what you were doing before you got hired at KMS, right?
Yeah. And then Mr. Hall actually called me and said, "Hey, do you want to come apply?" And I'm like, "Okay, I guess, yeah."
Yeah, I sat in that interview. I remember that.
That's right. You and Baeza.
Yeah.
It's done.
You were clearly the first choice.
Really?
Wait, I say that, right? Yeah, you stood out because the way you are, like, everybody sees your personality, your energy, and that's how you were in the interview. So I mean, that helped big time, for real. I mean, that's the kind of attitude or how you are, and so I mean, it was just easy, I guess. But anyhow, you're gonna have to edit that out.
No, I like that.
To play affirmations before he goes to bed.
I like that. Every podcast we have now, I'm gonna say, "Okay, tell me something good you like about me." Okay, so today we're talking about me some more. No, I'm just kidding. We're talking about cells. So I think
like
that's
gel cells?
if only. So I think considering everything that's going on now with the coronavirus, it's good that we're talking about cells, and we don't go as in depth as I guess 7th or 8th grade go into it. We just go into the fact that living things are made of cells, and in order for something to be considered living, it has to have cells. Now, I don't really know where to go from that. Okay, let's go into the criteria of what something has to be alive. There's like 5 things in order for something to be considered alive. 1, it has to have cells. 2, it has to take in like food, has to kind of digest some type of nutrition. It has to be able to grow. It has to be able to reproduce, and it has to be able to affect the environment. Now, Quintero, one question that I've always had with you is, what happens when artificial intelligence finally immerses, and now we have robots, but they're not made of cells? Would they be considered life?
Ooh.
That's why it's artificial, Edward. No, they wouldn't be living. I mean, what's cool is the marrying, or the combination of like your mechanical versus biomechanical. Like, that stuff is real. People with prosthetics, target nerves and stuff like that. That's interesting. But I mean, AI is always going to be digital, and it's always going to be dependent on digital or.
Right, but if we create a robot and we say like, hey, the robot says, hey, I feel stuff. Like if you chop off my arm, that hurts me. And when I go to sleep, I have dreams and I have feelings and I have thoughts. You say that I'm not living, but I have consciousness. I have these ideas. I know what it's like to be myself. So how can you say just because I don't have biological cells running through my wires that I'm not alive?
Well, based on the criteria to be considered a living thing, you have to be made of cells. So it wouldn't fall under that. But I get what you're saying about if at one point AI becomes aware, conscious. Oh, I have a conscience. I feel like I'm living, and you're telling me I'm not. Whenever you get to that point, I think it's still not by definition a living thing, but it has. I mean, again, it's all programming. It's all programming stuff. So
does math ever have like these sort of existential like questions in class, or these sort of like ideas? Because math is an interesting subject. I could never teach it. I mean, I could. We teach math in science maybe like 4 weeks out of the year. We have to teach speed, we have to teach density, and it's basically just formulas. But it's like super easy. It's like we turn it into like an infomercial. You're like, you plug in your numbers, you repeat, and you calculate, and then we just become like that infomercial for like a whole month. But like, does math ever like say, hey class, we're gonna talk about like something that it involves math, but it's kind of like this existential debate or anything like that?
I wish I mean, like, it can, but I mean, for the past couple of years, I can't say that I've had any kind of conversation with
Yeah.
with these. I love my kids, but it's just been more trying to get them to do the basics. I mean, like having algebra this past year, I've seen where it could possibly go, because the kids will ask me, and this is my first year teaching algebra, so I was like, I know how to do it, but I was asking like Macias, like, how do I teach this? And then I get the kids who are like, okay, well, what if I do this? And can't you use like this formula to figure this out? Or the exponential graphs, you can use it and whatever. And I'm just like, oh yeah, let me ask Macias. So that's like the closest I've ever gotten to any kind of talks like that.
Yeah. Because like math and science, they're obviously like related. You can't have one without the other.
Oh, for
now,
sure.
the mathematical part of science doesn't really come into play, I think until you advance a little bit more, especially like when you get into college, when you finally have to use math to prove what you're trying to say. Yeah. But at our level, the science we're talking about is all just like, it's not hypothetical, but it doesn't really, we don't get into the mathematical formulas of why stuff happens. We just say, this is how it happens, and here's the proof. But if you really want to go in depth into it later, we can actually get the math out and talk about it. But that's not until you get into college.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the hardest part about teaching math?
I think it's like just the rules. Or no, I think lately it's been like numeracy, just them being able to. I remember growing up and knowing that 3 and 4 always make 7. So like 23 and 24, it's going to end in 7. And the kids just don't have that knowledge or that capability. They haven't had to think about it. Just number sense. They just don't have number sense. And that's what's been the hardest past couple of years.
Do you think it's because they don't play Word Muncher anymore? Did you ever play Word Muncher?
No.
Quintero, did you ever play Word Muncher? Yeah, it's that computer game where the guy was trying to eat you, and then like it said you have to eat all the 7s, and it was like a grid. It was like Pac-Man, and there was like a bunch of numbers, and it was like 3 + 4, 2 + 5, 1 + 6, and then you had to go eat them. But there was like a bunch of them. There was like 9 + 9 or 4 + 8, and you're like, well, that doesn't equal 7. And there's all these animal or all these little things trying to eat you, and you had to go around and eat all the right answers. You ever play that game?
Not that I remember.
No, I haven't played that. Nope.
Is it like you played on your IBM at school, or what?
Yeah, we played it. Remember the Macintosh?
I was I had a typewriting class in high school, Edward. I mean, an actual typewriter. So
The
I
time
don't
where
know
you
what
did
game
this
that
at the
was.
end, or what?
I had a typewriting class where you and cling and you click it back and you type. I mean, that's old school, buddy.
Yeah, that
I don't know what that. We even had a class where we did computer programming, like at the very basic level. It was like the green screen, and you typed in instructions like go to F7, whatever, blah blah blah, and it would like loop. And we just did one thing, and that was it. I mean, that was a long time ago, man. Yeah, don't even make me start talking about them days. All right.
Okay, are you allowed to count with your fingers, or is that a no? Because in science, we allow them to do that.
Do it. They don't even do that. or they do it wrong. I'm like, oh my god. But I think that people complain about what is it, Common Core, but we can't teach it here in Texas, so it's not getting taught. I think
what is Common Core? I don't even know what that is.
Common Core is like the TEKS, but it's what states have adopted it, right? Q.
That's like, it's a different way of teaching math. Like, if you're gonna add numbers, you split them like in blocks, something like that. Like, there's just like that's just like a generic example, but and because you always see those posts where like, remember when you just put the numbers on top of each other, you just added them straight down, like that kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. A lot of states adopted it, and it was getting a lot of negative feedback because you had parents who were like, what are they doing here? Why don't they just add it like this? Because you had different ways of solving the problem. That's like what Zoe was saying. There's different ways of doing. Kids have different ways. And I think that it met a lot of resistance. And so Texas never adopted it, I don't think.
No.
And other states even actually stopped the Common Core. So it got a lot of, but yeah, it's a different way of teaching math.
Yeah, and I think that like in the elementary level, I remember growing up and we were taught like one way or two ways how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and now they're taught like several different ways. And I think that's kind of hindered the students' learning because they have not been able to get better or I can't think of the word, but like get really good at like one way of solving a problem or adding or subtracting, that they're forced to try 4 different ways instead of, hey, let's do it this way. Oh, okay, there's 2 kids that don't understand to do it this way. Let me teach them an alternate way. So the kids are just coming up with like, oh yeah, they taught us several different ways. I didn't ever learn. So
why do you think that the idea of negative is so difficult in science and in math? Because like in science, there's like an idea of negative space, but it's kind of a very difficult idea to really grasp. And I know in elementary school, like when a kid is like in 2nd grade or 1st grade, I don't know, if you tell them like what's 4 minus 5, they're like, oh no, you can't do that. But obviously you can. So why do you think like negative is just so hard to grasp at a young age?
I think it's an abstract thing, and I think that again, going back to like the times now, that there's a lack of imagination, and people watch those YouTube videos watching kids like play with toys. Like, oh, this is how you're supposed to play with the toy. And it's like, no, come up with your own thoughts. So I think it's like so abstract, and the kids should be able to get it because that's when their imagination is like, running rampant and developing. But I think that's the thought. But I always try and like take it back to money. And if $4, something costs $5, that means you had to borrow $1. So now you have -1 because you owe that $1 to your mom, whoever.
Yeah. Quintero, what's been like a difficult topic for you to talk about where it's just too abstract?
Shoot, I don't know. How do you explain?
Like density can be kind of hard because they all just always want to think about weight.
I mean, that's a good example. I mean, because you can't really look at the matter inside the object, right? You can't say, oh, look how tight and packed they are. You can't do that. And so you have to do math for that. And you do math and say, look, this is how dense, and you give them examples, you show them materials, and you kind of show them like why one's more dense and not. But will they ever have a visual? Will kids ever grasp it visually, like how it really look, how it might really look at the atomic level? I mean, I don't know. That's hard. That's really hard. I mean, just like the vastness of space, like that's another thing. Like how we can't comprehend that. I mean, even us, it's hard to comprehend how big it is, and then you're trying to teach kids, and they're like, "What?" You know,
the cool thing about space is that, like, when we finally do talk about it, you can tell that some of these students have never like really talked about it before at an in-depth level, because they'll start asking questions and then they'll start freaking themselves out. Like some of them will say, like, "Sir, if space ends, and like, does that mean there's a wall? What is that? What is there on the other side of the wall?" And then you have another kid be like, "Whoa, what? Like, what are you talking about?" So I think that's the cool thing when you finally talk about space. They're starting to ask themselves questions that they never even considered.
The possibilities are endless, really. And to see, the thing about cells is, so you teach kids about cells and all the organelles, and the cool thing about that is you can look at these things under a microscope.
Yeah.
You can actually see them, but you can't see them with a naked eye. And so, like, yeah, all these things are providing you with life. They're functioning. They have specific functions that do something for you to be living, which is really cool. And I don't know, kids don't ever think about it, right? We don't ever think about it. We just take it for granted. We're just like, oh, we wake up, we do what we do, and we don't know that it's the cells in our body that are doing that, keeping us alive, and all the systems working together. When they get into body systems in 7th grade, then they learn about all that, and they're like, whoa, what? All these different systems function to keep, it's pretty awesome. But again, it's cool. I mean, the cool thing about that is that science is like everyday life. Like, you can apply science and math to everything. That's what's cool about science and math. And you can always put that in your daily life about anything. Walking, how fast you're walking, exercising. I mean, spending money, all of that, science and math, which makes it pretty cool, makes it interesting and fun. But so that's what's another thing again about cells is that when kids are learning about cells, they get curious, and at least I think it's more tangible, right? I think you can actually do something with that. Look under microscopes, which we probably would have done in class, because we do that as a lab in class. We look at cells under the microscope to show kids, and so that's going to be different. So when we're online trying to teach them about it, we're going to have to like show them some kind of concept of that, because they're going to see pictures and like, oh, what is that? What is that? So it's really interesting. But again, I think like density is a lot more difficult to teach than I think cells would be. Cells, I think, would be a lot easier. Although there's a lot more information about cells that makes it probably more difficult.
I think cells is one of the things that I remember from biology. Like growing up, I never forgot the Pythagorean theorem. I always tell the kids, you'll never forget it. You won't remember what to do with it, but you'll never remember the formula. But like cells, and especially, I've always remembered like the mitochondria and then like riboflavin, and of course the nucleus. Those are the words that always stick out. But I haven't thought about them in like at all until lately with this whole the Rona and how the virus is affecting the cells. So I think it'd be really awesome for y'all to go over that and see. I don't know, if y'all somehow incorporate the virus into it, or would that be more like?
No, you could talk about it and kind of discuss how that works, because a virus is basically it just commandeers your cell and takes over the DNA, and it makes your cell a virus-producing factory. And that's basically what happens. But they'd have to just understand that, like what DNA. I mean, I think most of them probably have heard of DNA, but do they actually know what it is? Maybe not. But I think most of them have an idea because they've heard that term. That term's a lot. It's used a lot more nowadays. So
DNA testing.
Yeah, so they probably heard it before. They just don't know, well, how does that work in the cell? So I think, but yeah, that would be cool to kind of go over the virus and say, hey, look, this is how a virus works.
So when it comes to cells, one thing I always like to ask different teachers or different people is, eventually as we keep on progressing, we're able to manipulate the cells. And when it comes to like reproduction, um, theoretically, well, actually in China they've already done some of this stuff where you can actually change like a cell and say, okay, I want my kids to be born with like blue eyes, or I want to have a female, or I want them like, you can kind of edit their genes a little bit. Do you think that's something that is ethical? Like, should that be allowed? Should you be able to design your own baby? Now I say yes, Quintero says no.
I'm torn. I mean, my mom used to say she went and picked out my parts at the baby store, so it's kind of the same thing. I think to a point, yes, because I mean, if you can choose like for it to be healthy, that would be awesome.
That's a good argument. That's my argument. That's what I say. Like, we take vaccines, or like if they were to tell you, hey, we can give you a shot, and that means that your baby is not going to come out like with any deformities or any diseases, then of course you would take it. And that's a form of gene editing. That's like saying, okay, like you're manipulating what the baby would come out like.
Yeah.
So what's that any different from saying I want to have a kid who's 7 feet tall?
Because you're manipulating the what do they call it? I'm thinking of the term. Hold on. Oh my gosh, phylogenic. I'm not sure. Anyhow, so here's the thing, that you're manipulating genes for gene expression. Like if you're trying to prevent disease and saying, hey, I want to do this because I don't want my child. Okay, and I get that, but then now you're specifically picking up. Oh, my kid has to be 7 feet tall and has to have this much muscle, and if you're doing that, you're building a child. It's not natural. And then on top of that, you're gonna have a population of like
Amazon women.
Yeah, humans that are specifically built for their parents' purpose. Like what's the purpose of your kid being 7 feet tall? What is you as a parent trying? Why are you doing that? Because you want your kid
to get stuff off the shelf so you can get it.
So then you're talking about parents doing it for maybe their own selfish reasons, right?
Yeah, but aren't parents doing that anyway? Like psychologically, like we all raise our kids in a certain way. Like we raise them with our values. It's the same thing.
I mean, it is.
I think the overall.
You're talking about values, and then you're talking about gene expression, physical attributes. That's different. It's different.
The main argument I hear all the time is like, well, then that would like lead down to the like racism. Like people would say, well, then we would start to like create like a super race. But I find that it would be the opposite of that, because how could you say, well, I'm a part of a super race, when it's like, dude, you just got your super race at the store. Like anybody can have that. So it's not like if you were like magically like chosen, or you're like, oh, you're special. It's like, oh, look, I'm 6'5". I'm part of the master race because I'm 6'5". It's like, dude, you didn't do anything to earn that. You were given that. Anybody can be 6'5". So I think the opposite would happen. I think you'd get rid of racism, because it'd be foolish to say, look how special I am. You're not special. You were just designed that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. I see both y'all's, but I'm gonna go.
So why am I right?
I was thinking, I'm like, okay, yeah, people can choose like how they want their kid, but then you have maybe the parents who are like, I want a football star, so they design them that way. But then you could get like, I hope the government doesn't hear me. The government. I read books. Like I have these fantasy books. And they be altering, to make these, like you said, super race, these super military, whatever. And then also, to go even darker, you've got these weirdo parents that could be making and designing their kid to look a certain way because they're gross. And so when the kid grows up, you know what I'm saying? Like, Hugh knows where I'm going with this.
Right. But couldn't you make that argument like now? Like parents are like, their kid is like 4 years old, and you're like, no, you're going to play football. We're going to go practice for 8 hours a day. Like that's happening now.
Yeah, that's true.
So psychologically, everything you're saying, parents could still be doing psychologically. So
that's why I don't think everybody should reproduce, but
yeah.
Everybody had the choice to pick their physical attributes, then everybody would say, well, then we all should be able to reproduce. You wouldn't have to worry about any like altering any faults or any deformities or anything, you would be able to say, oh, well, my kid's going to be this tall, this fast, or this smart, blah, blah, blah. And you wouldn't have, you'd have like a perfect, you'd start having these perfect human beings. And then, I mean, it's science fiction, and I think it's unethical. I think you could do that already. You could look for someone with those attributes. And if that's what your mindset is, like, hey, I want my kid to be 7 feet tall, well, then go look for someone who's tall, because your kids will have a chance of being tall. That's all gene. You're just passing on your genetic information. So you could do that already, theoretically, by picking someone specific with those attributes you're looking for. Matter of fact, they had a website, and I don't know if it's shut down already, and this was in California. I don't know. Anyhow, but these gentlemen would donate their sperm, and they were like PhDs. They were 7 feet tall. They had blue eyes. They had all these attributes.
7-foot PhDs.
Which one you wanted. You could pick which one you wanted. So that way, when you did the, I guess, in vitro.
Like a vending machine or what?
Yeah, yeah. And you would have, and matter, they did I don't know if it was a 60 Minutes, but this one guy had like 30 kids because he had these attributes that all these people wanted, and they shut it down, I think, already. I mean, this was years ago, but that's what you're talking about. You could do that already. You could go look for someone physically with those attributes that you're looking for. You can go find someone if you want.
Q, that's a Vince Vaughn movie.
Yeah, I've seen that movie.
Are you sure you're thinking?
Did you see this on 60 Minutes or on Redbox?
Yeah.
I think it was a meme being passed through Facebook.
Fake
No,
news.
I think what we see as strange in the future is just going to be like normal for the people who are living it. Like if you would have asked anybody 100 years ago about like what you're just talking about, where you can go get a sperm bank and get a female get pregnant, you would have told that to somebody like 200 years ago in the 1800s. They would have said, that's crazy talk. Like, that's not the way babies are born. You're supposed to meet a man and get married and have kids. Yeah. Like, and now if we were to talk to them now, if they were to talk to somebody in the year 2020 saying, no, you could just go to a sperm bank and get like, have a baby that way, have a test tube baby, they'd say that's the most unethical thing. Like, it goes up against religion and what they believe and blah, blah, blah. And now we're like, well, no, it's not. If you're a female, you really want to have a child and you just can't, but this is the way you can, well, then you do it and it's no big deal. And they're like, yeah, but what if a female wants to have 100 kids or what? And like, they come up with these scenarios where you're like, well, I don't know how that would work. But like, we talk about these scenarios, like, well, what happens if you want to design your baby to have like 5 eyes and be 8 feet tall? And like, yeah, that sounds horrible, but I don't think anybody would really do that. I think when it comes down to it, most people would say like just 4 eyes would be fine or something. Like, I don't know.
We had that author that came to our school this past year, right?
Schusterman.
Yeah, and he wrote the book Scythe. And I didn't finish reading it because it was just too out there for me. Like, I can take some sci-fi, but this one was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the other girls that read it really liked it. So anyways, the book was about how like they were able to make some kind of like nano whatever cells that like you never die, basically. So This kind of reminds me of that. So what they did was, in order to like control the population, was they had these designated people that went around with their scythe, like they were called scythes, and they got to choose who they killed. And so y'all's talk is reminding me of that, and I just thought it was just crazy and out there. I couldn't finish it. It was ridiculous.
That's kind of like similar to Altered Carbon, except Altered Carbon is
that's on Netflix, right?
Yeah, you could live forever. They have these digital stacks basically, but and you use different bodies, or they call them sleeves. But it's interesting. I'm reading the book, about halfway through it. I saw the TV show, and then I was like, man, I'm gonna read the book. It sounds pretty cool. It looks pretty cool. But that's kind of like that, where you just live, and the people with the most power and money are the ones that get to really decide that they get to live the longest and stay in control and in power. But Scythe, I guess Scythe is a little Scythe. What is it called? Scythe?
Scythe, the little hook thing that Death walks around with.
Probably a little different, but on the same lines, I think.
Yeah, no, no.
Yeah, I got into. I think I don't know if it was a debate with Grosso or Miss Tay. I forgot who it was about Schusterman because one of his books was about like the parents can end up deciding to kill their kids later.
Unwind.
Yeah, and I'm like, but why would they do that? They're like, because this is like the agreement that they came up with abortion. Was that what it was?
Oh yeah, I guess yeah. Instead of having an abortion, they could decide later to.
And I'm like, but that's not how it works. And he's like, yes, this is what happens. And I'm like, no, but people don't decide to have an abortion because they hate their kid. It's because of their current situation. When the kid turns 18, they don't decide like, okay, now I can finally afford to kill my kid. And so he was like, no, you just don't get it. So I'm like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any. So that's after he told me that, I was like, I'm not going to read this book.
No, I couldn't finish. Everybody liked it. They read the whole series, and they told me about Unwind, and then they mentioned like the other books he's coming up with, and I'm like, this is too political. Like elementary, this is middle school work. It's too crazy.
Yeah, I was surprised when they said that these were what were his books about. I'm like, this is middle school. That's kind of intense.
Yeah.
What's more interesting? Well, that and again, it's like switching the topic here, but like, yeah, like teaching kids about how you can alter gene expression, like glowing fish,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all those things. Like you can have glowing cats. You can even buy glowing cats. Did you know that, Zoll?
No.
Yeah, you can look it up. People that sell cats that glow because they inject them they put the jellyfish gene in them, the glowing gene, so they glow. I mean, they don't like glow with light, but I think under certain conditions, like a black light, they actually illuminate green or something. But there's that kind of stuff's already going on, gene manipulation in a lot of animals. But that's also like selective breeding. You can breed with certain to come out with certain attributes. So I mean.
I had to look it up. That's crazy.
Those gonna have a glowing cat next week.
I know. We turn the lights off, guys.
Okay, another question I've had about math is: do you think mathematical formulas are they human inventions or are they something you discover?
Both. Well,
Like the Pythagorean theorem, that's like one that you brought up. Is that something that is somebody discovered that, or is that something that somebody made up? I mean, obviously, yeah. Did he make it up?
It's a mixture of both, I think. Was it Pythagoras? He was trying to find a quicker route to get to from Greece to I don't know, some part of Africa. So he was able to figure out like by doing the right triangle, he could, instead of just going from like, I don't know, going from one island to I don't know. But I think it's always been there, but the mathematicians definitely like discovered it or brought it about. Can it be both?
I mean, I guess it would be both to some extent. I mean, so right now there's mathematical formulas that are yet to be discovered.
I think so. I think they're being discovered or altered.
Yeah, like Good Will Hunting, when you try to solve those math things. I don't know what they were. I don't know. I like that movie. Anyhow, but
like speaking of like people like that,
subject for me. Math is so hard for me. I have a lot of difficulty in math, and I have to reteach myself stuff, even on some basics in math. So that's not really my forte. But I don't even know what the Pythagorean theorem. I remember Pythagoras. Was that his name or something? I don't know. Isn't that named after the guy? That's all I know about it, really. That's all I know.
You remember the formula?
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
I don't remember the formula. I do not.
And then there was Fibonacci, who discovered like the patterns in nature. I say he discovered, but I guess he pointed them out.
Yeah. So like the Fibonacci sequence is just each number, the past two numbers added up.
Yeah.
So is it like 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21.
You should be a math teacher. Is this like an interview? You want to be a math teacher now? You're gonna get a job.
Actually, Mr. Hall asked me, do you want to be a math teacher or do you want to be a science teacher? And I said, no, I'll do science. And I think that's why they ended up hiring Miss Nimrick. I chose no, not Miss Nimrick. They hired somebody else
The
for
second
math.
one.
Yeah.
The one that I can't remember, but yeah, the second one.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, looks like we're getting kind of close to the end. So, what's something that you would like to tell your students?
Oh God, second period is still my favorite class. They know. They know who second period is.
Quintero, anything you wanna say?
Well, we say this all the time anytime at the end of our podcast, we miss our kids. I mean, we miss the classroom. I mean, I guess the routine of getting up, going to work, having something to do, and I think at the beginning it was like, oh man, and you're kind of getting used to it, but then you realize like, man, you can't really socialize and go hang out, and that's been, I think that now has been more of a big deal to me. So I think I can see where kids, because when you're that age, you're social, right?
Yeah,
big time, a lot with your kids and friends at school. So I would just tell them to hang in there, and we'll get back to normal soon. And I miss them, and we'll see them next year.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I just want to say the same thing. Miss you guys, and try to not go out and do crazy things or even normal things, even if they say, give yourself a little bit of time. I know that they're going to reopen some stuff on Friday, but I'll probably still be at home watching, giving myself a couple of, maybe an extra month or so before I actually do decide to change my routine of going places, because unfortunately I think that some of the decision to kind of go out is based more on economics than it is on science. And I mean, that's part of life. You can't be we just can't stay home like forever, because that's not the type of society that we have. We have to consider economics. But I think if you have the ability to continue to stay home, then I would do that. If you can't, then I mean, I guess it's understandable. But
be safe. You got to just be safe and keep practicing the physical distancing. I think that, I think I'm with you on that. Where I'm gonna give it about another month or maybe even two, and to see where everything goes and what's gonna happen with more of the social interaction that's gonna occur. So we'll just kind of engage it from there and measure it, and then figure out what we're gonna go from there. So, but stay safe. Don't go anywhere if you don't have to. Watch TV. Do your work do your Google Classroom. Please do your Google Classroom before Saturday and Sunday, because I don't want to be grading all weekend or checking work all weekend and sending out reminders. So do your work, get it done quick, be over with, and you don't have to worry about the rest of the week.
And I also just looked it up on iTunes. They actually do have number munchers. So go check out number munchers on iTunes. And don't worry about Common Core. Okay, students, until next week.